Welcome to Heroes Rising, hosted by Sifu Raphael, a master instructor, public speaker, and the founder of Speaking Prowess. Known for his expertise in empowering individuals through the art of communication and leadership. Alongside him is co-host Jose Escobar, an acclaimed personal development speaker, 18-time published author, and founder of 2 thriving businesses, including the Connected Leaders Academy. Together, they bring you dynamic conversations.
Okay, so before the show started, good morning, John. How are you?
Good morning.
I tried my best to fix everything, and I see that things did not work out as well as planned. So I need to change one quick thing, see if it works still.
The wrong
It
intro?
should be Author's Tales. So if you guys give me 1 second, I'm going to come out and come back. John, don't go away. I want to make sure that we have everything correct. Let me do that. Okay, I think we are back. So I want to start that again by apologizing, not just to you, John, but to everybody who's watching us and so forth. What I'd love to do is go ahead and start the actual Author's Tales. So welcome to Author's Tales. I'm excited to have an incredible author who I now can call my friend, right? He's created this incredible book for leaders. And John, we have so much to talk about. I'm super excited to have you on the show as well. Let's start with what inspired you to even start to write this incredible book?
What inspired me? Over the years, I had about a 30-year career as a management consultant. And I started out consulting in the area of total quality management, TQM. And in those days, the question that was being asked was, we know what we need to do technically, but how do I get my people to want to do it? So I tried to help people answer that question. And then over the years, the big thing, it wasn't TQ, as we know, the next big thing always comes along. But whatever the next big thing was, the question was always the same. We know what we need to do technically. How do I get people to want to do it? And I realized 20 years later that that really what the question was, how do I get people more engaged? When the term became engagement, it was around the turn of the century that the term engagement came into popular use, employee engagement. When the research done by the Conference Board and Gallup in particular showed the clear correlation between higher levels of employee engagement and better performance along such critical dimensions as productivity, profitability, employee retention rates. But I look back and I said, that's what I've been doing all along. I just didn't call it that. And so I thought, okay, I have a home now, and this is what people are calling it. But when I saw what people were doing in order to increase levels of employee engagement, I saw that what they were doing was, not to put too fine a point on things, wrong. So the book was my attempt, after I had retired, I've been retired for a few years now, my attempt after I had retired to show a few pitfalls that people could avoid and how they might avoid them. It's a very short book, and that was by intent. I didn't see any point in larding it up with all kinds of theory. It's an attempt to say, look, here are a few things, a few simple things that I think will be helpful to you to avoid these pitfalls. That's what inspired, if that's the right word, inspired me to write the book.
Yeah, I love when you talk about connections, because one of the things that you also shared with us is the employment is not mechanical, right? It has to be a true connection. And I
Right.
love that you put this in here, because the engagement, and you said you've been doing it all along, right? And it's so important for everybody to understand that you get more out of people if you connect on a
Yeah.
more personable level, right?
Now, where they tended to go wrong, the word engagement is it's a very common word, and typically it connotes a kind of mechanical connection. Like here's engaging. And that's a perfectly reasonable definition. But what happens is people then, too many leaders then think, well, if I put people in a room, they are therefore engaged. And that may be a first step toward engagement, but it isn't the same thing. The definition of engagement that was behind all of that research that got people excited about employee engagement, the research done by Gallup and the others, is the extent to which people will invest incremental effort and energy on the task at hand. And they're not going to do that just if you throw them in a room together. You have to. I have a good friend who consults in this area, and she says a question she always asks her clients is, "Why are we gathering? Why are you?" Meaning the groups. Why are you bringing them together? And that's a challenge. Can I give you an example?
Absolutely, please do.
This is in the book. I was doing some work with a vice president of quality, vice president of human resources for a company on a completely different topic. But while I was sitting in her office, she handed me a piece of paper. She said next week she was having a meeting of her leadership team, her management team. And she said, "What do you think?" It was the agenda, draft agenda. "What do you think of this?" And I looked at it, and it looked perfectly reasonable. But I noticed that she had penciled in on day 2 for 2 hours. It said breakout sessions. And so I said, "Okay, you've got breakouts penciled in here. What are you going to do during the breakouts?" She said, "We don't know yet." I said, "Well, then why are you doing them?" "Well, that's the engagement part of the meeting." And I thought that, to me, so here they're having a 2-day meeting. So let's say it's 10 hours a day. So there's 20 hours. 18 hours is going to be information bombardment. And 2 hours they're going to devote to what she thought was engagement. And that, to me, really kind of belled the cat. That points to what the problem was. What my friend said was, "Why are we gathering?" Because that, and the way I put it in the book is engagement is not what happens in the room. It's what happens in the heads and the hearts of the people who inhabit the room. And if you see engagement as simply putting people together, you're not going to get there. You have to ask yourself a harder question. What do we need to do to tap into that incremental bit of effort and energy? How do we truly connect with people? And if putting them in a room together will do that, great. But it's not enough. And people just sort of think that's enough. And that, to me, is a classic pitfall that people are prone to.
When I picked up the book and I was reading it and I read that part, I was like, oh my goodness, because that's what a lot of people do. This is why so many people have meetings. And one of the questions that I appreciate is, why are we even having a meeting?
Why are we gathering?
Yeah. Why? I got to tell you, one day I drove 14 hours because I had to go to this incredible meeting. Something that should have been done over Zoom. I drove 14 hours. I was there for 2 hours and then I drove back. I almost stayed, and I said, you know what? I'm so annoyed that this whole thing could have been handled, even on a phone call, would have been fine.
Mm.
But to go 14 hours and then come back 14 hours, I was like, I will never, ever do that again. But they insisted that I needed to be at this meeting. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to fly because from the airport to their location is like 3 hours. I might as well just drive the whole time. Thank God I enjoyed my drive, right? Because I listened to audiobooks and
Driving could be nice.
podcasts.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed my drive, but still it was so worthless. And when we talk about engagement, it's people need to understand what that is. And this is why I believe that this book that you have here, and I'm going to put the QR code for everybody, you need to pick up this book. This book is not thick, and there's a reason for that. And John, I want you to tell everybody the reason that your book is not so thick. Like we can pick up a big, thick book because there's a lot of fluff in it. It's just like some meetings. There's a lot of fluff.
Well,
But you
there's
don't
not a
go
lot of
through it.
fluff. There's a lot of fluff in some books. I don't think there's a lot of fluff in this.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's no fluff.
It's because one of the premises of the book is where people go wrong is that, I mean, the subtitle of the book is, and I have the book in front of me because I have to remind myself of the subtitle, Hard-Learned Lessons from Dealing with Those Pesky Intangibles, AKA the Soft Stuff. And the soft stuff that I talk about in this book, I deal with 4 intangibles. Engagement is one of them, empowerment, trust, and respect. And they're not randomly chosen. I offer a little heuristic which says that respect begets trust, trust begets empowerment, empowerment begets engagement. So they work together. And what I say is these things are tricky. And if you're not precise and consistent and clear in the language you use, you're not going to get there. Mm-hmm. And so this book is largely talking about, here are some definitions for these things, and here's why the definitions are important, and here's some examples to illustrate why the definitions are so important. And that's all the book is. But there are things we know. Mm-hmm. We know them. We've just gotten too cluttered up with other things, or we tend to think that we like human animals. I'm an engineer by training. Mm-hmm. I am more comfortable dealing with cells on a spreadsheet, and I like to be able to have a formula and say, A plus B equals C. Good, that's done. And I think by nature, people are that way largely. They know what's worked for them in the past. They like to have a plan, and they like to have reports. How are we doing with the plan? And so, and so on. And they're averse to truly dealing with things like respect and trust and empowerment and engagement. It makes them uncomfortable.
Right.
Well, tough. That's your job. and I mean, if you really want to succeed, that's your job. I remember that research that Gallup did shows the correlation between high levels of engagement and hard business results. It's not soft at all. The only reason we're talking about this is because it leads to hard business results. And one of the things I say to people is, I'm not saying you got to throw rose petals in people's paths to make it no, this isn't a touchy-feely exercise. Right. It's having a clarity around the language will help you get to those hard business results. And that's what this book is intended to do, to help show this clear path in terms that it's kind of what our mothers and fathers taught us. Yeah. I mean, if you want to get right down to the basics of it.
Yeah, I love it.
Our teachers or our clergy or our mentors or whoever.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that you definitely brought up earlier was trust, right? And trust should not be given to anyone. I think to me, trust is earned, right? And when we think about trust, how does all of it come together? Because trust also is going to go into respect, right? Because those who you trust, you respect, right? They kind of go hand in hand.
They go together. The definition of trust that I offer, and I saw that you just put it up on the screen, is trust is confident expectation. It should not be given presumptively. If I'm managing a project team, an ad hoc project team, a 7-person ad hoc project team, and you are now on my team, and I've never met you before,
Right.
and you say, I will deliver X by Y date, I'm not going to say, okay, good, go do it, and never check on it. I'm not going to trust you. It's not that I think you're a bad guy. I don't know. I don't have any data to support. I'm not going to be heavy-handed about it, but I will occasionally check in with you. How's it going? Are we still on track? Okay, good. And if over time you deliver over repeatedly, then maybe I will then say, okay, next time you do it and say you'll have it by that date, I'll say, good, go with God. It's done.
Yeah.
Someone, on the other hand, with whom I've worked for years, who always has delivered and says they'll deliver by that date, I may just say that. I may presumptively trust that person because that person has earned my respect.
Right.
Earn my trust. Respect, on the other hand, I say always must be given presumptively. I can think of no more pompous or arrogant thing to say to someone than, you must earn my respect.
Oh.
Now, I want to say, well, who the blank are you? Just as a human being to human being, you may be above me on the hierarchy, but you're not a better person than I am, and necessarily you may be, but not necessarily. Respect must be given presumptively, but it can be lost. Trust must not be given presumptively, but it can be gained. Respect must be given presumptively, but it can be lost. And those two go together, and that's the only way to operate. And the definition of respect that I offer is giving due consideration to the other, where the other is, and I always make this qualifier. I know other is a loaded term these days. My definition of other is anybody who isn't you. So it's when you there's an example in the book where I tell an employee had sent an email to his boss in response to a request the boss had sent him, and gets a reply from the boss that says, not what I was looking for. 4 exclamation points. And this sends the employee into panic, and the employee doesn't know what to do. That's the only information he has. So he cancels his staff meeting because he's got to figure out what to do. Maybe he knows the boss well enough to walk down to the boss's office and say, what gives? But maybe he doesn't. So he cancels a staff meeting, which completely messes up their day, which in turn maybe messes up the days of the people with whom they were supposed, the ripple effect.
Of course.
And if the boss had simply taken a beat and stopped to think, all right, what I say or don't say and what I do or don't do affects others. How will I affect the other with this email? Maybe I needed to give a little more guidance here.
Mm-hmm.
Not what I was looking for. I thought we were going to include A, B, C, D, E. Now the person has something to go on. Maybe it's trivially simple to answer the boss's request. The boss was being disrespectful by not giving due consideration to what the other person might have needed. And in turn was messing up how confident it messes up trust, because how confident might that person be in what to expect from the boss the next time.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes respect to trust to empowerment. Well, they're not going to get to empowerment if they're still hung up on trust. And engagement is way over the horizon at this point. Can I give you an example about empowerment?
Yes, please, definitely.
That's also
I love the idea of you taking us and giving us not only a story, but the idea of an actual example, so people can understand the concepts of why they need to pick up the book. I'm going to share it again here. That's the I'm going to take this off so you can see the full thing. So you can take your phone out, get your QR code, scan it, pick up the book. And just I want to share the book cover again with you guys. Is if engagement is the what, then respect is the how, right? And it's like we said before, it's not only a good read, but it's a book that you may want to go to a couple of times just for reference. So I do enjoy this book. Thank you so much for sharing this with us and the world. I appreciate it.
Thanks. The example about empowerment, I was doing some work with a large company, and they had just done a survey of their employees, asking their employees the extent to which they felt empowered.
Mm.
And they got the results of the survey, and the results were very disappointing. And they talked about it for a while, and the president was very disappointed. And he was a good guy, a smart guy, well-intentioned guy. He wasn't an idiot. He got up at the end of the discussion. It was the VP of HR who presented the results, but then the president got up at the end and said, okay. And in the meeting were his direct reports and their direct reports. So this is a large company. So this was big, high-level people from a large company. And he said, look, you people need to understand. By the way, those words are dangerous to start with, you people. But anyway,
correct.
you people need to understand you are empowered. And I need you to go back to make sure that your people understand that they are empowered.
Mm.
And I was sitting in the back of the room, and I could see in the front row, one of his vice presidents started to raise his hand, and then he pulled it down.
Mm.
And so then that part of the meeting ended, and there was a break. And so I ran up and caught that guy, and whom I knew from having worked with them.
Right.
And I said, you wanted to say something when Jim said the business about go back and tell your people they're empowered. He said, yeah, I did. I said, what was it you wanted to tell them? He said, well, what I wanted to tell them was we could tell them they're empowered till we're blue in the face. But if they don't feel empowered, they're not empowered. I said, well, why didn't you say it? He said, oh, no, too risky.
Mm.
So I thought, think of the irony of that. He did not feel empowered
to say
tell
something.
his boss that his approach to empowerment might have been lacking.
Mm-hmm.
So So that the definition of empowerment that I offer in the book is a feeling of safety while exercising judgment on the job. A feeling of safety. And so that guy, that VP, this was a VP of a big company. This wasn't a little minion, guy who made good bucks and been successful, had a successful career. But he did the calculus and said, nope. He exercised the judgment, said, no, this isn't worth it to me. I'm going to get this. This won't go well if I do this. And the president probably would have been horrified had he been able to sit down one-on-one with that guy and heard that.
Mm-hmm.
And not, had a flat forehead moment and said, oh, what kind of environment have I created here?
Right.
And I later was able to have that conversation with the president and say, and I talked to the guy first. I said, would you mind if I brought that up with Jim? He said, no, go ahead. But it's this notion of I say a chapter title in the book is you can't bestow empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something like as though you're knighting people or blessing them.
Right.
You are empowered. No, it's a feeling that people have. You don't get to say it. They have to feel.
Have to feel it for sure. Yeah.
You don't put them in a room and say you've been engaged. No, that's the extent to which they are moved to invest incremental effort and energy. And again, that's the nature of these things. It just is, and there's no getting around it. I told you I started my career as an aerospace engineer, and
right.
I still have good friends with whom I went to school, and I tell them and I have lunch with them maybe once a year, and I'll say, if I had told you back then that I'd be making my living, I make my career talking about this stuff, I'd have thought you were nuts. But and yet, how is it rational? People say, I like to deal with the rational stuff. Well, how is it rational to see things not work and not do anything about it? It's perfectly rational to say the way people are going about it isn't working. Here's some ideas that might help you. So.
No, I love it. It's very interesting when people don't realize the importance and the little nuances that go into leadership, right? And you obviously you're an expert in it because you've seen it firsthand. You've guided companies and individuals into how they're leading. Because for that gentleman not to be able to see that even though he wanted people to feel a certain way, empowered, they weren't empowered. They didn't feel it. They didn't have that freedom, if you will, that empowerment gives them, right?
His direct report didn't feel empowered to raise his hand and utter an objection to him in this meeting in which he had just told them that they were empowered.
Right. Yeah.
Here's another example, another story. It's in the book an example of an HR person who doesn't get this stuff. You would think HR people would get this stuff, but I was giving a talk. I was asked to give a talk about this kind of thing to what I might have thought was about as difficult an audience as I could imagine. It was the software security people of a technology company.
Mm-hmm.
these are not people who tend to spend a lot of their time mulling over the soft stuff, unless it's software, but
Right.
soft. But I you know, okay, yep, I'll do it. And I gave my time, but I thought, all right, how am I going to do this? I'll try something a little bit different. Instead of talking about the intangibles, I'm going to begin by trying to give them an example of one and get them to feel one.
Mm.
So I'd never done this before. I told them the story of what had happened on the night that my son Michael was born. At the time, Mike was about 30 years old. So this is about 30 years after he had been born. And I told the story of okay, so I happened to be home, thankfully. And well, I worked out of the house, so that's normal. But I could have been on the road, but I wasn't. And my wife said, "Oh, I think it's time." You know, so okay, so we grabbed up the go bags. I called the hospital. I called the obstetrician, and we got in the car. And I turned the key. You still had to turn a key in those days. And
I remember that.
And the hospital was only 4 or 5 miles away. Wasn't a long drive. Felt long, but it wasn't a long drive. And the song that happened to be on the radio was Piano Man, Billy Joel's Piano Man.
Mm-hmm.
So we get to the hospital, and all went well. Next day, mother and baby doing great, so on and so forth. So I said to them, to this day, whenever I hear the song Piano Man, I get a powerful emotional jolt.
Mm.
I cannot show it to you. You cannot touch it. You cannot hold it. But don't you dare tell me it is not real. And I said to the people in the room, and all of you have an equivalent story to tell, where you have some sense memory that is very real to you that you can't show me, but you know what I'm talking about. And I could tell that, yeah, at the beginning of the story, they were kind of sitting like this.
Right.
Know? But by the end, I could tell that they were bought in. And what really, and then I thanked them for their time, and I exited stage left, and I got a nice round of applause. And one of these very technical, hyper technical software security types held up his phone, and he played piano. It was playing Piano Man, and people started singing Piano Man. I thought, oh, that was a very gratifying moment for me. I took a little bit of a risk, but it worked. It was great. So there was a break after I was done. The director of HR for this group came down the aisle and said to me, "That was wonderful. Can I give you a bit of constructive criticism?" I said, "Of course." She said, "Not everybody in this room is a baby boomer like you and I are. So maybe it'd be better next time you tell that story if you use a song, instead of Piano Man, you use a song by somebody like, say, Katy Perry." And I said, "Oh, yeah, I'll give that some thought." What I wanted to say was, "But that's what happened." It was a genuine story from my heart. That I opened up my heart and told these people the story of what happened. And besides which, Katy Perry is younger than Mike, so it wouldn't have worked. But then that was an HR person who didn't get it and didn't understand the power of that, who was thinking very rationally, logically, and worrying about, well, the demographic profile of the audience instead of, I don't know. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. But here's the crazy thing. And even kids nowadays know Piano Man.
Well, that's true. I mean, that's a classic. So
So
that's
it is a classic, right? And it doesn't matter that that song will never be old, if you will. And you're right. She didn't get it because she wanted it more for what she would do. And there was no engagement with her, I believe, in what your talk was. So the guy who held up the phone, he was engaged in your storytelling. He was part of everything that was happening. And for him to hold it up, it just it put the nail on the coffin, if you will. It said, "You're dead on. I loved it, and I want to support you." And I think a lot of times when we get into the engagement part, people don't do that. They don't even say, "Hey, you know what? I'm with you," or "I'm not with you." And so the engagement has to be, are they participating? Because I believe a lot of people don't. They'll show up to a meeting, they'll show up to an event, and they don't participate. So why did you even waste your time, right, to go to that event or that meeting?
why did you drive 14 hours?
Oh my God. I will never do it again. I will do it for fun, but not for a meeting, right?
Yeah.
So, John, when it comes to and you wrote over here, it all starts with respect. Respect begets trust, right? Why is that so important?
Well, again, it's that they all
They correlate.
ultimately it leads to engagement. You know, it's the starting point. And the reason respect is so important is that of all of those things, there's respect, trust, empowerment, engagement. Respect is the one thing that each of us has complete control over. We don't need a budget. We don't need approval. We just need to do it. And whereas trust, that's two people. Empowerment is a little more complex. It's a result of a number of things having happened. Engagement is even more things having happened. Trust is like the boss in his office before he fired off that email saying, not what I was looking for, taking a beat and saying, wait a minute, what effect is this going to have? Okay, let me give him a little more data. That's, each of us can do that. And that's why I think that's why I say, you know, if engagement is what, then respect is the how. I think that the leverage is in everybody. It really emphasizing this notion of infusing respect throughout the organization. And respect in that simple definition, giving due consideration to the other, not a flowery definition, not a, you know, just, did you stop to think about how what you said or didn't say or did or didn't do affected others? And I think if you do that, you're 75% along the way.
So I'm about to date myself a little bit because respect made somebody a lot of money. And I'm talking about Rodney Dangerfield, when he used to take his tie and he used to go, I get no respect from my wife over this. But he understood that people kind of felt the same way he did, but he made fun of it. And when somebody doesn't feel respected, in other words, they feel rejected. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and if they feel rejected, how likely are they to invest incremental effort and energy on the task at hand? You know, at the end of that train is engagement. I mean, I'll do my job. I'll come to work, but I'm going to just do what I do. And
right.
Yeah. No, I never thought of Rodney Dangerfield as the avatar for this. I always thought of Aretha Franklin, but that's you're
another
right.
one.
You're right.
Because he played on it and he did it so well that it's very interesting, because I had a friend of mine who wrote a joke and sent it to Rodney, because Rodney was in New York. And he actually, you know what he did to my friend? He said, "Thank you very much." And he sent him a check for $50. If he was smart, my friend, instead of cashing it, he should have kept the check because it had Rodney's signature. That was just worth the price of admission, if you will.
Yeah.
But he was brilliant in the way he joked about respect.
Well, he hit the mother lode.
Oh yeah,
He had been around for a long time
Right.
before he started before he hit that,
Right.
and then he had it. He had his comic persona.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
then he made movies and the whole deal.
Oh yeah.
So when you think about you're retired for some time now, but you're still helping people. Why is that important to you?
Well, it's I don't want to come off sounding sanctimonious, but it's something that I like. I want to do. I mean, if I can help people, I want to do it. I mean,
Okay.
I don't travel much anymore, but this is a way to do it. Sessions like this, it's not 14-hour drive. As you can see, I'm sitting in my apartment doing this. Yeah, the writing I do. I mean, I wrote this book, but I do a lot of other writing for my own enjoyment. I write general interest articles. I write humor columns. I write, but if I can help people, I want to help people. I mean,
Absolutely. I suggest everybody, John's got his name across, it says johnguaspari.com. You can't get simpler than that. Just use his name, right? John Gus. How do you say you like Guaspari or Guaspari?
It's Guaspari.
Guaspari. Oh, there you go. Right. And so make sure you go there. Just put a .com at the end of his name and you will get, tell us what they're going to get when they come to your website.
Well, there's, my books are there. I've written 8 books over the years, but it's over the years. So a lot of them are out of print, but nowadays books that are out of print, you can still get, as we all well know. And then a bunch of articles, a bunch of articles of business articles, general interest articles. And then there's a whole section under articles called humor, which I think is the most fun for people to read. When I was traveling a lot back in the 80s, 90s, and aughts, traveling a lot on business, I wrote a weekly humor column for my local daily newspaper. Remember those? Daily newspapers. Local daily newspapers, which don't exist anymore.
They don't.
No, they don't. And that was a labor of love. That kept me sane because I was on airplanes a lot and in hotel rooms a lot, and I had a ball doing that. And I'd be in a hotel room and I'd have written something by hand, and I would have to run to the business center in the hotel and fax it.
Wow.
Remember those?
I remember those. I had a couple of those too.
Fax it to the editor. Yeah.
If any youngsters are listening to our conversation, you may have to Google some of these things. What's a fax? Right,
well, your hair is darker than mine. My hair is appropriately white. So.
Yeah, but I have years on you. I'm 104. Not bad, right?
Okay.
I got to tell you, what a great conversation we've had. And every time you and I have a conversation, it's always incredible. what is next for you? Because you wrote this book and you're still writing, you're still going, and you talked about your hair getting white. It just shows it's not age, it's wisdom. So that's how I see it, right? Anybody who has gray hair or white hair, I say, wow, I need to talk to them because I'm going to learn something. And I'm always looking to learn. So what's next for you, John?
From a business point of view, I honestly don't know.
Okay.
I don't know that I have much more to say. In some ways, this book was kind of my saying the things that have been rattling around in my head for the last several years. As I told you, I did retire from active consulting. Sad to say, I retired earlier than I had intended because my wife took ill. And so I wound up having to be her primary caregiver. And she passed away in 2020.
Oh, sorry to hear.
Thank you. I was blessed. We had 40 years together. We were married for 40 years. She gave me 2 wonderful kids who are doing well. My daughter and son-in-law live about an hour and a half from me, and my son, daughter-in-law, and their 2 sons, which means my 2 grandsons,
Nice.
live in New York City, which is not that far from me. I live in Greater Boston. So I did retire earlier than I intended. And because I retired from active consulting, the consulting work that gives you the grist for the mill to write things. And I don't know is the short answer.
Yeah,
I've always found it. I've told people that speaking of wisdom, I don't know if this is wisdom, but people would ask me, and I just, it's perfectly okay to say you don't know if you don't know.
Right.
I don't
That's
know.
the wisest thing that anybody can say. If you don't know, just say it. Right?
I don't know. I will say this. For years, I've thought I might want to write a novel. I don't know if I will ever get up the gumption to do it, but that may be.
Someone always said to me, it starts with the first words when you write a novel, and then it just propels from there, right? So I would encourage you to go ahead and write that novel.
Oh, I still am active writing. I've been drafting a humor piece. I've written some things for some humor websites that have been published over the last few months, and I've just finished a piece that I'm polishing up before I submit it. And they don't pay anything, but I don't care.
Yeah, it's because you're having fun doing it, right? So yeah. There you go. And thank you for doing that, because one of the things that I believe a lot in is laughter, right? Humor. I did an interview with a lady who runs a humor clinic in Europe, and it was based for people who were dying. And they would come in and help people just have laughter. And laughter was such a great thing for everybody, because
what a blessing it would be for them.
They were more at ease. So when they passed on, they were happier. So I think that's a beautiful thing, right? So
that's great.
Yeah. John, I got to tell you, my friend, thank you so much for being on Author's Tales. I'm sorry we had a hiccup in the beginning. And I even said it before we even got live. I said, I got to take care of a couple. I guess not everything got taken care of, but it is what it is. And I got to tell you, John, I am beyond thrilled that you and I are connected. And I've already asked you to come on my next show, which is Unified Leadership. And we're going to talk about it, because you have this incredible mind of a leader, and we need to hear more from you. So thank you for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yes, sir. All right, everybody, do me a favor. Make sure you share this episode with somebody who needs to know about leadership with my good friend, John. And one more time, I'm going to put it up here in case you did not get a chance to click on that QR code, get your copy of this incredible book, because it is a good read. And it's not just to read a book that you put down. It's a book that maybe you go back and take a look again. So it's a book that you may want to take a look, even highlight and start marking it and write some notes in it too. That can help you. Thank you, John, again. Everybody, God bless, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Author's Tales. Stay updated and meet new authors. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Sifu Raphael TV. Follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn, and visit our website. Your support means the world to us.